Welcome to the Leading Conversations podcast, sponsored by the Excel Leadership Network. On each episode, JD Pairing will have conversations with church planting pastors and leaders from around the country. You can learn more about how to connect with Excel at the end of this podcast. Let's join JD now and listen in on this leading conversation.
Well, welcome to the Excel Leadership Podcast for Leading Conversations. Today we have a couple who are not Plain, but they're from Plainfield, Matt and Carrie Dilley. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, I want to hear your story. Both of you, how you came to Christ and also how you met, and in any order you want to go. Why don't you start, Carrie?
If we start with me, we can start chronologically because I'm one of those like womb to tomb Christians. Like I come from a really like a great family. I come from a ton of Jesus followers in my family. I was preaching about parenting and family a couple of weeks ago, and so I added it up. And as of that sermon, I think my grandparents, their kids, and then their kids now, we have over 329 years of marriage represented. And that will, if you
That's
add all,
incredible. That's
right.
incredible.
That's just three generations. Just three generations. That we're a decent sized family, but like my grandparents had 4 kids. And so that's kind of my story. So I don't really have like a big conversion story or like this big powerful moment. I was just sort of born into just the right family and lived all the way through. And then I met this guy when we were 8. We went to elementary school together, and then middle school, and then high school together. And then that's where your story kind of comes in.
Yeah, I didn't grow up a Christian. We didn't go to church or anything like that. And so I didn't really believe in God. And we started dating when she got back from her freshman year of college. But we had been friends for a number of years. But she invited me to church, and I went, and I thought it was lame, just like I thought it was. And I didn't like it at all. But she kept inviting me. And then eventually she went back to Ball State, and she called me and she's like, hey, can I, call you back? I got this guy in my room. And I was like, who's this guy? And she's like, oh, he's just a friend. I'm like, no, I got to lock this down. So I went to school. I went to Ball State to be with her. And I started going to the Christian campus house there and started meeting with the pastor and asking questions about faith and things like that. And I didn't, she had it as a condition that I would be a Christian, but she did not make that known to me. So it allowed me to come to faith sort of on my own. And so we started going to church in college shortly after we got there.
Yeah. My sort of strategy with that was I would get him to the door, and then I would just kind of abandon him. And I would skip off to play with my friends and leave him to talk to the other guys that were there. So it was really them that led you more so than me. I sort of got you there, but I didn't really. Yeah. I wasn't good at leading people yet.
So Matt's plan was to go to Ball State and major in Carrie, and Carrie's plan was just to lead this guy to the Lord somehow.
Yeah, you nailed it. You did know it.
She likes to tell people that missionary dating works.
You do it too many times, though. That's
right.
Not.
If you're right, you'll get a guy who ends up becoming a pastor and a church planner.
What I really tell people is, if I told you, I do joke with that, but then when I'm done with that, what I always say, especially when I'm talking like teenagers, I always say, if I told you that I had won the lottery, like I hit it really big on the lottery, would you think that you would also hit the lottery? And they're like, no. Like, there's no way, like, I know somebody who made like millions in the lottery, that I'm also going to make millions in the lottery. I'm like, right, your chances would go down because you know me. I'm like, well, I already won the lottery. Like, I took a guy who was an atheist and he's now getting his doctorate in ministry. We are church planters and theology.
Right. I would say that being married to me is like when you're that is
That's correct.
It's a perfect analogy.
Well, how did the ministry thing work? You got connected. What was your call into ministry?
Well, we were both serving as in volunteers roles at a church plant, actually, for 5 years. And I was like fourth worship leader in line. Like, so I led like once a month. I'm another pastor at we had like this like little worship sort of mini retreat at our church, and I met a guy that brought in to speak, and he invited me to come lead worship at his church, and was like, "Hey, you're really good at this. You could do this as a vocation." And he encouraged me to apply for a position at it's actually a mega church on the north side of Indianapolis called Northview, and I applied, and they hired me. And so that really, I felt like we both had felt that we needed to move on from that church for a while. But part of it was I was afraid to leave because I didn't actually think anywhere else would let me lead worship. And so I was like, man, I really enjoy doing it. And if I leave, I won't be able to do it. And then it turns out like, no, like God had bigger plans for me. So I'll never forget, like we left that church and I started working at Northview, and they had one of these big like anniversary weekends, and Carrie's in like the second balcony, and I was leading worship on a song, and I was like, this is crazy, because like not even that long ago I was leading worship for maybe 150 people, and not thinking I could go anywhere else, and now I'm leading worship in front of all these people, so for like the third service or something.
Yeah.
Carrie, was that part of your call, or was it a little bit different as you were thinking about jumping in?
The initial call was definitely to Matt. I was very content to be in the second balcony for a long time. And even at the church that we were at before we planted, I was pretty content to be in the back. And then we
ran a lot of ministries.
We did. A lot of, yeah.
I see now, like as a church planner, like, oh my gosh, I would have loved us. We were great.
Right.
I see it on this side of things a lot better than I did then.
But I was pretty content to stay fairly anonymous at that time, because I felt like that's what God called women to do, and I wanted to do everything exactly in the right way. And then it was in one of your courses of study, he started like kind of adjusting the way he felt about women in ministry, and thinking about how he wanted to just thinking about things. And like it was funny because he would say something and be like, oh my gosh, like I've been thinking that same thing. Like I remember he was working on, I forget exactly what it was, but when you were working on that paper, the pastor at our church had just like preached about Sarah. And I remember sitting there and thinking, I don't want to listen to this 50-odd-year-old man talk about pregnancy and infertility. I don't want to do that. I don't think that's a good thing for me or anybody else who's here. And so, and then like, but I didn't have a solution for it. And then it was when just through conversations with you, like talking about like women in ministry and things like that. And so that's kind of where I got brought in.
Good. Now, talk about the church planting. How did that happen?
How did that happen?
Such a loaded question.
How did you go from being a worship leader and somebody's just starting to sense God's got more for me as a woman, to planting a church in Plainfield, Indiana?
Well, so honestly, part of our story was I served as a worship leader at a church for 5 years in a vocational role, and was really content there, and had moved into an associate like pastor role, and was preaching about once a month, maybe twice a month on average. And they let me go, surprisingly. And it was a very devastating thing for our family. And I was like, I don't think I want to do ministry anymore at all. And I was like, I'm done with I'm done with ministry. I'm done with all the stuff that's associated with it. And I just don't have anything to do with the church. Maybe we'll go be part of a church, but that's going to be the extent of it. Mm-hmm. And that was really the plan. I'd already started looking at other jobs, and I'd been approached by other churches, but honestly, it felt like I was just going to step right back into the same kind of church that I was at before. And I didn't want to do that. So as we were getting into the, like, me talking to, because I used to be an insurance adjuster, and I was going to go back to that, and Carrie was teaching, so she was still doing that. She was going to be a principal.
I think I was studying. No, I'd just gotten my license when because I have a principal's license that I don't use.
So I was thinking about going back and doing insurance adjusting, and I remember talking to my mom, and she was like, well, she's like, you should just plant your own church. And
I don't think she's the word plant, but like make your own church.
Start your own church. And I was like, that's ridiculous, because I made fun of church planters, sometimes to their face, sometimes not. Just because I thought that doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just go to an established church? Why would you start a new church? That seems like a lot of work, which I had no idea how much work it was.
I had a little bit of an idea how much work it was, because I'm actually a third generation church planter. My grandparents were part of the leadership team that planted a church in Richmond, Indiana in the 60s. And then my parents were part of like an elder board that planted a church in the 90s in Franklin, Indiana. And then ours in 2001.
So she said that, and then the only like church planting organization that I'd ever heard of, I had just heard of the previous year, which was ARC, and I thought, well, maybe, I remember talking to the people who ended up forming our leadership team, and they were like, that's awesome, we should totally, like, let's start a church, that sounds great. And I remember even as we were like filing for our name and stuff, everyone's like, we're starting a church. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm still not sold on this. Like, it's a $35 to like register the name, like with the state. Like, I'm not really in that much, but they were like, we're doing this. And I'm like, we'll see, we gotta. And then once we started talking to ARC, and
you have to back up. So there's a church in Indianapolis that's kind of known for being an ARC church plant. So we decided to take the people that we were kind of talking about coming alongside us for this, we would take them up there to kind of check it out, see what it's like, see if this is something that we would maybe want to be a part of. And it was their 7-year anniversary. And they spent the entire service telling the story of how they planted that church. That was the service we randomly showed up to.
So you got your mom telling you to do it, and you've got this other things happening. So go on. Well,
so yes, and then ARC, they had some questions, because they were like, listen, like, so you got fired from your last church, and now, like, what's the goal of starting this church? Are you healing? What's going on?
I want to make sure we weren't a revenge church.
Right. And I honestly, like, there was some soul searching, at least on, I don't know about you, but on my part, because I was like, I got to make sure that I'm doing this for the right reasons. And honestly, like, I told myself, like, if we didn't pass their assessment, then, then I would just shelve it, and we wouldn't do it. I would do something else. So I threw it out there. Like,
I think especially after hearing about the process for that other church, and how much help that they had from being a part of a network, that we were like, we can't do this on our own, because we know we know that we don't know what we're doing, and so we need help from a network.
Yeah, because we still don't. I mean, we didn't have a denomination, which obviously we don't, and still we didn't have like a sending church or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So there, we needed something. We actually, ARC was like, yeah, we're totally good with you guys being part of it. They accepted us, and that was great. And they were like, well, you need to raise $50,000, and then we will match the $50,000. So our leadership team was like, we got this. We're going to hold a garage sale. Each of us are going to like donate stuff, and we're going to hold a garage sale. And we raised $267 and like 74 cents. And I was like, well, I don't think that's going to do it, guys. I think we're going to have to figure out another way to raise some money.
He still has, when they gave us the cash, like, obviously some of it was in like change, because people buying things for like a quarter or whatever. And every time we clean out our office, I'm like, what is this random bag of money? What is this random bag of coins? And he's always like, don't touch my coins. Like, don't mix those coins up with anything else. And they're the coins from that garage sale. We still have the coins from that garage sale.
That's much more valuable than $50,000. I mean, seriously. And what does it take to plant a church? $50,000? Not necessarily.
No.
But people having a garage sale and coming up with some change, that'll show that you're in. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really how we got it all kind of started, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had our first launch week. Well, actually, I guess before that, so over the summer, that's when I met you.
Yeah.
The summer before we launched, I went with Chad Lunsford, who has a church up the road from us, to Exponential. Somehow, I think he had someone else who was supposed to go with them, and they weren't able to go, so he offered me the ticket to go, and I went, and I met you, and you said to me, "What?" So it would have been like a Thursday or something,
and it was like February, March, sometime point of the year where it's really stressful for Indiana teachers.
Anyways, you were just like, "Hey, what are you doing Tuesday?" And I was like, "I don't think I have anything going on." You're like, "Do you want to come to Phoenix?" And I was like, "I'm in Orlando talking to this man I just met from California who wants to fly me to Phoenix. This is what I was trying to explain to Carrie." And she's like, "Who's this guy?" I'm like, I don't know. He's this guy, and he's got like a church planning network, and he offered to have me go to Phoenix, and I was like, I think I should go. And she's like, "What's it about?" I'm like, I don't really know exactly, but it's happening in like less than a week. So, and he kind of wants to know if I'm coming right now. So,
and I was like, "Okay, man, whatever."
Yeah.
Like,
and that's our philosophy at Excel. What's it about? We don't really know, but it's happening in a week. That's what we're trying to do.
I was like, I still don't know. I'm like, but Chad says he's great. And I was like, he seems really nice. But she was just like, this is safe, right? You just met this guy. Like, this is good. Like, you can go to this. I'm like, I mean, I guess we'll see. I'm like, I guess dying in Phoenix is kind of like hell, right? Because it's like,
it's real hot there.
Because it's real hot.
It wouldn't have been real hot yet, though.
Not in March. In March, it's much closer to heaven.
Yes, you're right. It is really nice out there at that time. It's fantastic.
Hey, talk to me a little bit about your roles. Are you doing this together? Are you co-pastors? How is that working? How'd you figure out your roles?
So that actually kind of goes back to before we ever started church planting, in probably would have been April of 2017. We went to Catalyst together. And while we were at Catalyst, I wasn't, all of that work that I talked about, that like changing the roles of women in ministry and things like that had already begun. And we went to Catalyst, and I just remember thinking like, wow, like we are better when we're together. Like just when we're together, it seems like I'm better, he's better. Like we're just firing on all cylinders when we work together on something. Because at the time, like I was teaching, I had just graduated from my master's in education. And so we had spent a lot of time apart, like, because you're apart all day. And then I was gone 2 nights a week. And I just remember being overwhelmed by this idea that we were supposed to do something together, which again, doesn't make any sense. I literally had just got my principal's license. And so we're driving in California, like along the coast. And I remember kind of talking to him about it. And I remember you saying that like you were feeling like the same thing, but like, and not like we wanted to be on vacation together every day. It wasn't like that, but like we just felt really called to work together, to be.
Yeah. And it was a conference too. So
yeah, where we didn't have like any role of it. It wasn't like we had some presentation we had to put together or run a booth together. It wasn't anything like that. We were just there together and learning together. And so when church planting, so that was in like April of 2017. So in August of 2017, when we decided to plant a church, it just made sense to do it together. Right?
Yeah. So we had established from the very beginning that it was going to be a co-pastor situation. as far as like how that's working, it's great. I mean, our roles are, something that Excel helped us do is talk about that we needed to define a little bit more about what each of us did. And also it added, at least with us individually, obviously, I'm sure this is different for each person, but with us individually, we were spoken into of your ability and the fact that, we could do this together. And that was really encouraging, because I think that we, even at that point, we're still kind of tentative to the idea, more because I think just optics and fear of
and
how it might look or something. I don't know.
I mentioned my awesome family. My awesome family is not super on board with women in ministry, or at least in my role. And so that was like, you've got some people that you have a lot of respect for who are telling you can't do what you want to do or what you feel called to do. And that was hard, but, we were at the Discovery Center 3 weeks after we launched. And I always say that, like, if you could have somebody come into your house 3 weeks after you had your first baby and like walk through your house and like dig around in your drawers and like look at everything that you're doing and observe you really closely for a couple of days and be like, you are going to be good parents. You're going to be able to do this. This baby's going to survive. You're going to be okay. The baby's going to be okay. Like, that would give you so much confidence as a parent. And that's exactly what Excel did for us. That you guys kind of came in and dug around and looked at us. I remember it was in the preaching room, I think. Mm-hmm. And they mentioned like letting me talk. Like
that was the other room.
You remember that better than I do.
Yeah,
because that was more significant for you.
Right, where you're pitching like the church, and then like I had finished my thing, and they said, someone asked, well, because you answered a question, they're like, she's really good. She's really good in front of people, and she's doing a great job up there. Why don't you let her speak? And I'm like, she is this weekend, and they were like, okay, and then they moved on. They're like, all right, I guess that covers that. I was like, she's actually speaking at church this weekend. I will say that the role, like, she preaches more now than I think we anticipated for sure. True. Because during COVID, we went to all online, plus we were dealing with permits for the building that we're currently leasing. And it was a whole thing. And so there's a lot going on. And she came to me one week and she was like, you just seem so overwhelmed and just totally tired and exhausted by everything that's going on. How can I help you? And I was like, well, you could preach this weekend. And she was like, oh, that's not what I was expecting you to say. And I was like,
I thought he was going to say like make lunch.
But I was like, honestly, that's what would help me the most, because I'm like, I still have to edit, the service that's, all the worship and stuff that's coming up this weekend, because our worship team was committed to trying to deliver new worship every week. And that's great. But then you still have to record it, and then you have to film it, and then you got to edit it. And it's a whole process. And I was the one doing all of that. So she started preaching more as a result of doing that. And our congregation, they really like it. And we've also, something we've always been passionate about from the very beginning was bringing in a variety of voices. And so it's good to have us. Plus, it doesn't feel like, I meet so many pastors that they're the only ones preaching, and then they get like a year or two in and they're just exhausted because they're preaching all the time and they just can't keep it up, especially in the season that we live in. And we just don't, I don't feel that way. And
I don't feel that way
because we're sharing the load. And I also know, like, if I have a really busy week, if something's really tough, I'll be like, hey, can you preach this weekend? And vice versa. So that's really helped freed us up, I think, a whole lot. And our roles are, everyone knows in the church the things that they're going to come to her for and the things they're going to come to me for. And we work together to kind of cultivate that. And sometimes I talk to pastors and they're like, well, I couldn't do that with my spouse. And I'm like, some of you probably can't, but I think many of you could. You would have to change a little bit of how you do things, but you could if you wanted to.
Right.
Here's a word to the wise. Don't ask Matt how you can help him, because he'll say, why don't you preach this weekend?
Why don't you preach this weekend? The first time he did that, he'd actually done that once before. And the first time he did it, I think I had to like put my eyes back in my head, because I was just like, I'm sorry, what?
That's a great story. Hey, let's end with this. I want to give each of you 1 minute. What do you want to say to other leaders, couples, whoever out there? You get 1 minute. Give us your best leadership advice.
Yeah.
I thought you were going. You want me to go first?
You go first.
Yeah, because you want to think of something.
I do.
Yeah. So you get the upper hand because you're like, oh, I have a great minute. All right, sorry.
No.
So I would say to keep things in perspective, I think one of the major things that at least for me, a struggle for me is that when you start, or at least when we started the church, the idea was that God's going to do this. And when we were raising the funds, I'm like, I don't know how we're going to raise $50,000, or I don't know how we're going to make all these things happen, but God's going to make it happen. And I just had faith in that God was going to make it happen. I was going to work for it for sure, but I just believed God would take care of it. And then something just pivots when you start planting the church. And I've talked to other planters about this, where you start putting the burden of making it a reality on yourself. And you're like, I need to work harder. I need to do more. There's something that I'm failing at. And that's why we're at the place that we're at. And the truth is that, and even on a mirror in front of my, I wake up every day, it's not your church. It's not my church. It's not my responsibility to make it happen. And if the church was for whatever reason to fail, the church has not failed. Now, Tribe may not exist anymore, but the church is still moving on. And even if only for a season, we were meant to bring in the people that have experienced life change and then have, decided to follow Jesus. If it was only for a season, obviously that's the role that God had us play, and we should be grateful in that. So for me, I would just remind everybody that it's not your church. It's not dependent on you, and you don't need to make it happen because it's not your church to begin with.
See, that's why I want to go second, because I knew no matter what, he's going to be that good. So I would say that I would encourage so many people to I want to encourage people to try co-leading. I see so many times, I see burnout pastors, I see exhausted pastor's wife. And I just feel like if people would be willing to try working together, to going together, we are so much better. When you ask about our roles, like really, they're almost parental. Like I kind of handle the mom stuff and he kind of handles the dad stuff at the church. And I think that God designed the family with a mom and a dad. And I think it makes a lot of sense to have a couple at the head of a church. And I know that there are places where maybe that's not a good fit or whatever, but man, I just feel like almost every time I hear about something going big, bad, and wrong in a church, I think if you had a strong couple leading that church together, that could have been avoided. And not that we have a perfect model, not that we have a perfect marriage or a perfect church, because we don't. But I just think there are so many things that God designed us to work together. And I think that is a really important thing to remember. And then the other thing that I would say is having a good team. We were really lucky that we decided to go in with a team, which we were told by many networks not to do. But man, having a group of people who have your back, if you can find those people and invest in them and invest in them and invest in them and invest in them, they will come through you over and over and over again. And that has been really, really huge for us. You mentioned that, like,
you need a minute.
Oh, I got a minute. I'm sorry.
I was just saying, yours is really good. Mine's mostly from Tom Mercer. So.
Well, thank you too for being on the interview block. Thanks for your example. You're doing stuff that a lot of people aren't doing quite yet, but it looks like maybe that's the way to go. So thanks for your encouragement. Thanks for your leadership. Thanks for being with us here today.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining the Leading Conversations podcast. We hope that you found it both helpful and encouraging. At Excel Leadership Network, our focus is on the church planter rather than the church. If you'd like to find out more about us, visit our webpage at excelnetwork.org. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. See you next time with another Leading Conversation.